Some say he's a technical whiz. Some say he was born in Cornwall. While others say he's on a journey. It's The Journey, and here's your host, David Hackett.
It's always a purpose to help other people and to get them unstuck and get to the next level of their lives. The journey explores about many things, and this person we interviewed today talks about consistency, commitment, habits, mindset, confidence, clear relationships, and limiting beliefs. And they also have a top 100 global podcast, which is named The Next Level University, with over 1,000 episodes. We welcome to the journey, Kevin.
David, thank you for having me, buddy. I appreciate it. And I'm excited to see what the journey has in store for us.
Yeah, the journey as a whole is different for everyone. So,
of course,
your journey is different to my journey, like someone else's journey is different. Anyway, so where does your journey begin? Obviously you're born, but
yeah, after that part, my journey begins in a small town called Uxbridge, Massachusetts. I was raised by my mom and my grandmother. I didn't know my dad. I didn't meet my dad until I was 27. So my journey started very humbly. And I guess I would say probably not with a lot of perceived potential. I don't think there were high hopes for young Kevin making it super far in life, but we've made it further than I think I expected as well. So no harm there.
Yeah, that's good, because I believe everyone's life as it is, and like I said, everyone's born, but no one understands when you're a teenager. No one understands when you're a young adult. That a journey is only just beginning, and it's difficult for a person to understand because you're learning yourself still.
It's weird because it's almost like every time you start a new level of anything, a new journey is just beginning, right? Like you start a podcast and that's a new journey. And then eventually something else happens and that's a new journey within the podcast journey. So it's very appropriate that that's the title of this podcast. And it is that, right? It's like everything is a new opportunity for new opportunities. And that's why doing new stuff is so important.
Because obviously your podcast started before mine properly. And don't get me wrong, I've got experience in radio, audio, podcasting, so I know what to expect. But it's just because pandemic hit, I wanted to make that difference. So that's where my journey is. But going into about getting people unstuck and getting to the next level of their lives, that's a step in its own right, mind for a journey, because obviously not everyone wants to admit, oh, I want to move forward, or they stay stuck in their own way.
Yeah, it's hard, right? Because everybody has different goals. And when you have a different goal, it requires a different level of awareness, consistency, commitment, everything that you so kindly introduced along with my name. And I think the part for me is I just want to help people. And I think everybody wants to help people. I've always just wanted to help people. And when I found podcasting, I realized, okay, well, that's the vehicle with which to help, very similar to what you just said. You started it from a place of wanting to help, same. And I think that's why most people start what it is that they do. And I think that's where many of our passions actually come from, is how do I add value to somebody else's life through my own unique experiences and lens? Yeah.
Because you got radio presenters, I'll go back to the radio situation. You got Howard Stern, you got people in England, like off the top of my head, a radio DJ called Chris Moyles, who's very similar to Howard Stern, but they both got different styles of approaching things. So how can one make yourself unique? To make yourself go to that next level, you have to make it presentable. So your style of podcast is different probably compared to mine, but it doesn't matter. It's about helping in the same direction.
Yeah. And it's really, I think at the end of the day, it's just making sure you're adding value to your audience. You know why my podcast and your podcasts are different? Because we have different audiences. And that's the absolute beauty of it.
And it's a niche market as well, because you've got to find that right point to say something's going to hit.
Yeah, that's a hard part. And that's a scary part for many of us, because you think to yourself, what am I going to be talking to 10 people? I think we assume it's smaller than it actually is. I mean, if you think like how many green bean farmers are there out there? I'm sure there's a pretty good amount. I mean, that's a very small subset of humans, but you could have a podcast about green bean farming. You'd have some listeners if you did it right, for sure.
Yeah. And I forgot how many podcasts there is, but there's over 1 million popping now. And, you got comedy, you got serious, you got talk, you can't add music because of copyright reasons, but there is podcasts that do feature music, and it's made into like a mini radio show, but they got the license to do it.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, the one commonality that the successful anythings have, podcasts, YouTube channels, musicians, anything, authors, is the consistency. I think it's the people who do it for the longest that end up making it. And I think what happens for a lot of us is we look at like the Howard Sterns. He's not a good example because he's been doing it for 20 or 30 years at this point, but would he be Howard Stern if he stopped 5 years in? No. Right? Would Joe Rogan be Joe Rogan if he stopped 5 years in? No. I think we have this weird misunderstanding when we say, well, I've been doing this for 3 years. That might not be that long of time in your industry. Like 3 years, if you do an episode a week, what's that? 156 episodes?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good amount, but there's a lot more that you can do. So it depends on the industry. That's the other interesting thing, is how long can you stay around? Staying power is a superpower.
And also it's about what you got as well, because some people can do it with good equipment. I started off on the, I would say, because we're not a sponsor, but generic tablets, on the tablet. Yep. So it started off on there, and now I'm progressed onto a computer. So I've actually got a physical camera built into the computer. And I've only just recently invested in getting a proper studio mic. But it's the small things that makes the better picture. So going to about consistency, you're saying about consistency. That's me being consistent. I stuck at it and I built from that.
I think there's 3 words that really matter. And is success this easy? I don't know, David. I don't know if it's quite this easy, but I think sustainability. You did a great thing. You started with what was sustainable. You started with what you had, and you didn't say, you know what? I'm going to wait for the right lighting, for the right mic, for the right camera, for the right laptop. I'm going to do what's sustainable for me now. Now you're doing it consistently. So sustainability, consistently. I'm pumping out episodes. Cool. 3rd word, improvement. How do I improve? Now I improved by getting a laptop. Now I have a studio mic. Okay. Next thing, I'm going to do something different. If you can focus on those 3 words with everything you do, if somebody wants to get in shape, the best way to do it is to start sustainably. And then you build in consistency, and then you focus on how to improve the process. And I know it's very simple when you say it that way, and it's not that simple in practice.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. But it's a good understanding to have, at least. It's a good place to start.
Yeah. So going into people being habits, is it about maintaining that habit? Because obviously people will think I do it as an habit, and then it then goes into the previous 2, which is commitment and consistency. Does the habit develop over time?
It should, right? Ideally, what happens is it becomes part of your identity. Let's do this. When you introduce yourself to people, do you say you're a podcaster?
I say I'm a blogger because that's how I started.
Right.
And nowadays I do say I make podcasts.
Right. Because now that habit has turned into part of your identity because you've been doing it long enough. So ideally what happens is it goes from, I'm not the type of person who does this, insert habit here, to I am the type of person who does this, until it gets to the point where it's like, I am this. I am a podcaster. I am a speaker. I am a coach. I am a blogger, whatever it may be. So yeah, in theory, the ultimate goal is for it to become part of who you are, to become part of your identity. There's a big difference between saying I go to the gym and I am an athlete. Because if you have the identity of an athlete, that suggests that you're athletic. That suggests that you are into the gym. That suggests that you're doing physical activity. So if you can do it for long enough and intentionally enough, you can turn your habit into your identity. I am a consistent person. Right there, that means you're ahead. You have a higher opportunity to be consistent than somebody else who doesn't identify as that type of person.
It's true. And, about having, like you identify as a podcast host now, and people recognize that, and you've built your reputation up on that, and you've learned yourself. So,
but it didn't start that way, right? There was a time in the beginning where if you asked me what I was embarrassed to say I was a podcaster because I wasn't successful or whatever, quote unquote successful. I think that's how it is for a lot of people. It's like a lot of us have the identity. So I think there's like really three identities. There's your old identity, there's your current identity, and there's the identity you must adopt or create to achieve what you want in the future. And for me, I had to lean into, I am a podcaster. This is me. I am this. I'm a speaker. I'm all these things. But in the beginning, I was afraid of what people thought. I thought they'd think I was, I thought they'd think I was a loser, or, I wasn't successful, or I was broke, whatever it may be. That was hard in the beginning.
Yeah. And I understand that totally, because not everyone's heard of podcasts, even though it's been out for like 20 years, I think it is now. People still like watch podcasts.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the interesting thing. It's not everybody should be listening yet. Maybe it's just not the right time for them.
So that's why I developed the podcast as a visual. So it's on YouTube as well as audio. So I got both sides of the coin.
I think that's a great idea.
So going into about fear in relationships and limiting beliefs, is that a thing that does help you grow as a person as well?
Yeah, I think fear is this interesting thing where we have this thought in our head that there are certain things that we're afraid of that we just will not do. And if there's something you're afraid of and it's a fear and you won't do it, it quite literally limits your opportunity to live a life. So for a long time, and I still am, but for a long time, I was afraid of planes. I don't get it, David. It doesn't make any sense how this giant piece of metal can fly through the air. I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm still afraid. I'm less afraid than I've been, but I'm still pretty afraid. But at one point, I decided, nothing else decided for me. I decided that I can't get on a plane. I'm too afraid. Well, that limits the opportunity for me to quite literally go places. So that fear is stopping you from experiencing new things. Now, here's the interesting thing. Every time I fly, I always take a picture, because for some reason, I always take morning flights, and the sun is so pretty when you're up there and it's like looking over the clouds. And I have a bunch of pictures from when I would fly. The thing that scares me the most also creates an opportunity for something that's so beautiful, I would never get to see that otherwise. So for a lot of us, we have convinced ourselves that because I'm afraid to speak publicly, or because I'm afraid to podcast or be on camera, I can't do blank. And that's stopping us. And that's a limiting belief right there. And that fear of being ourselves, or the fear of being vulnerable, that can limit us in our relationships. It really is an interesting thing that an invisible thing like fear is such a constricting thing for most of us. But I think we just get comfortable with it and say, well, this is what I'm afraid of. And this is where I'm okay with kind of holding myself back from exploring what's beyond it.
Yeah, because there's always possibilities beyond that fear.
Yeah.
You always shut yourself off from actually experiencing that.
Yeah. I mean, how many podcasts, and maybe it's different for you, right? How many podcasts were you scared before?
Beforehand, when I actually, and I will say this, and that it is in my list, Susie Quattro, a singer from America, and not many Americans know of her unless I say she was in Happy Days. But that was nerve-wracking, because I didn't know what to expect, because she's one big singer that was big in the UK. She was big in Happy Days, but I didn't know what to expect from how she was going to be, because it was a nerve-wracking experience, because it was so big.
Yeah. And again, imagine if you didn't do it, right?
Yeah,
I'm sure it went Hopefully it went better than expected or as good as expected.
Well,
but
there was a technical issue.
oh no.
But I managed to edit in such a way that it looked like I just jump cut.
Oh, okay. Well, it could be worse. It could be worse. But okay, cool. You faced the fear. Something went wrong. You figured out how to fix it, and you'll hopefully never make the same mistake. Hopefully the technical thing will never happen in the same way it happened. At least you faced the fear and you have an opportunity now to avoid a potential mistake in the future. It's all connected in some way.
Yeah. So how would you see yourself, say, for example, and this is a thing that career advisors, teachers always ask, where would you see yourself in 5 years' time?
5 years from today, it's interesting because we rely a lot on data. So we kind of like reverse engineer everything. So 5 years from today, I'll have another 1,600 episodes because we do an episode every single day. So it's 365 times 5 is, I don't know, probably like 1,800. I don't know. Our goal is to double in revenue and double in listens every year. So I think in theory, 5 years from today, we should be at like, I don't know. We should do $16 million in revenue that year, and we should have 16 million downloads that year. That's what we're aiming for. That's the goal. And I would expect that my wife and I will be living in a new place, and it's just going to be this. I'll be in a studio talking to you, maybe, David, who knows, in 5 years. The studio will be different. The location will be different, but the journey and the mission and the purpose should be exactly the same. That's the goal.
Yeah. So to end this, what would you say to people to make themselves feel good now, to make them say 2023 is my year?
Well, that's a great question. I would say do something today that the December 31st, 2023 you will thank yourself for. So don't necessarily do the easy thing today. Don't necessarily do the most pleasurable thing today. Do the thing you will be most grateful you did. If you don't want to go to the gym, I understand completely. I didn't go to the gym today, but if you don't want to go to the gym, ask yourself, what would the version of you on the last day of the year say? What would they want? Would they want you to go to the gym? Okay. Would they want you to record the podcast episode? Okay. Would they want you to save the money? Okay. I think it's a really interesting perspective because we literally all just did this. We all reflected on the previous year. Now we're goal setting for the next year. Well, what if we tried to mentally put ourselves at the end of this year and we were reflecting on it? It would help us make decisions now. So that would be my advice. Imagine yourself at the end of this year looking back and try to make your decisions that way.
Kevin, it's been a pleasure because I know you got another thing coming in half an hour. Well, 10 minutes time. So I'm making and podcasts don't have to be long. It can be short, it can be long, it can be either. But thank you for sharing your journey with us.
Of course.
Obviously, I promoted your podcast called Next Level University. But how else can people get in contact with you or follow you if they want to?
I always say just listen to the podcast. I think that's the best place. There's a lot of content. There's a lot of episodes, so you'll get to know us pretty quickly. So just follow the link in the show notes. That's the best place. And everything else you'll need will be there as well. And Dave, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Kevin.
Of course.
That was The Journey, hosted by Wise Words Imaging, hosted by David Hackett. Be sure to like, subscribe and listen to another journey coming soon.